Hi, and welcome back to your second video in week one. And today we're going to talk about how to classify or categorize the cannabis plant. We're going to talk about what does sativa and indica really mean. All right, so why is this lesson so important? First of all, if we're going to be out there educating people about the cannabis plant, we need to work from a common dictionary, right? Like a common list of words that everybody understands that they all mean the same thing. This is super important. And the other thing is that we cannot, as a cannabis community, agree on what to name things and how to classify them. So you have to be okay with sitting in this kind of murky world where everything is changing just a little bit under your feet. It's important to know about all the different ways that all the different names cannabis is being called. All right. So let's dive in. Okay, first of all, let's think about it like on a really big kind of meta scale. The cannabis species is divided and, kind of classified into several different kingdoms and things like that. So it starts out in the kingdom Plantae, and then the family is Cannabaceae. Hops are also in the Cannabaceae family. Then we move down to the genus, which is cannabis, and the species, which is sativa. And then we have these like potential subspecies of Cannabis ruderalis and Cannabis sativa and Cannabis indica. And then we get right down to like the strain name or the cultivar name, like Blue Dream or Chemdog or something like that. But it is infinitely more complicated than that. So I want you to start using the analogy of thinking of cannabis like apples. And the reason I use apples is that most people know that there's lots of different varieties of apples. So they're all they're all from the apple plant, but we know we have like Macintosh and Royal Gala and Honeycrisp. We have all these different types of apples. Each of those types of apples does a different thing. They're good for something different, right? Some of them are really good for baking. Some of them are really good for eating raw. Some of them have excellent storage. But we all know that it's all the same plant. They're all apple plants. So if you think of like a word, in the cannabis world, I want you to remember all the time that this comes back down to this is the same plant. So if you're thinking about cannabis or hemp, same plant. Marijuana, same plant. Sativa, indica, hybrid, ruderalis, all the same plant. Just like how dwarf apples and heritage apples and cooking apples, they're all apples. All right, so let's get into one of my biggest missions in the world, which is to talk about sativa and indica and what it really means. So in your head, I want you to look at these next two slides and decide which one you think best shows what sativa and indica mean. Okay, so is it slide one? Is this what sativa and indica mean? Sativa, we've got like kind of a scrappy looking thin leafed plant. And over here on indica, we have like kind of a bushy, thicker leafed plant. So is that what the difference between sativa and indica is? That's slide one. Or is it slide two? Does indica mean that you're going to be really tired and relaxed and couch locked in the couch? And sativa means you're going to be like up and dancing around and cleaning the house and feeling all happy. So again, make your decision. Is it slide one or slide two? All right, here we go. Did you choose slide one? Oh, winner, chicken dinner. I hope you chose slide one. And if you didn't choose slide one, I'm going to teach you why slide one was the actual answer. Sativa and indica cannot be used to predict how somebody will feel after they consume the plant. And we're going to say it again, even louder for those people in the back. You cannot use the words sativa or the word sativa to predict that that plant will make somebody feel uplifted, energized, bright, happy, etc. And you cannot say that if somebody consumes an indica plant, they're going to feel tired, sedated, relaxed, couch locked. You cannot. Okay, because it's just not true. So how the heck did we get these names then? Like, if everybody thinks that it means this, how did we get these names? I'll tell you how. This dude here, his name's Carl von Linnaeus. In 1753, he was on a mission to classify and record all kinds of plants, all like literally, like this was his job, was to go out and classify plants. he classified this plant that was growing all over Europe as Cannabis Sativa. Cannabis comes from a Greek word, cannabis, and sativa just means cultivated. So this is like a cultivated plant, and it was highly cultivated and everywhere in Europe at the time. Then, a few years later, a different guy called Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck came in, and he was in India, and he saw a plant that looked quite a bit like Cannabis sativa, although it was shorter, it was fatter, it was bushier, it had different shaped leaves, and it had a stronger smell. It had more sticky stuff all over it, and people were using it there for intoxication purposes, not like industrial hemp purposes like they were in Europe. So, did Carl or Jean ever sit down in the field of cannabis and like roll up a big doobie and smoke it and say to the world like, "Oh, I declare cannabis sativa makes you feel uplifted and indica makes you feel tired"? No, never happened at all. So the sativa and indica, they don't mean that. They mean, this is a cultivated plant, and this is a cultivated plant that was found in India, so we called it indica. And I know some of you are screaming at me through the screen right now, and you're saying, hello, like, I consume green crack or Jack Herer, and I feel uplifted, bright, ready to roar, or I consume something like Granddaddy Purple or Hindu Kush and feel exhausted. And green crack is sativa and Granddaddy Purple is indica, so that must be what it means. It's not. It's not, and it probably never meant that, and it definitely doesn't mean that now. And one of the reasons that this naming thing doesn't work is because of the issue of hybrids. So the vast majority of plants that you find on the market right now are actually hybrids. 30, 40, 60 years ago, we would have had access to just a few different types of cannabis that was imported from different places in the world. And maybe you could have predicted that if you got Acapulco Gold, it would make you feel the same way every time. But we are incredibly inventive creatures as humans, and we have been breeding and playing around with this plant for quite a long time. And once we got into like heavy prohibition, like the breeding of cannabis went underground and became really secretive, and they were breeding for THC. That's what the market wanted, was THC-rich cannabis. And so they were, breeding as many different plants together as they could to get really heavy THC pot, because that's what the market demanded. Now go mix sativas and indicas to get kind of the perfect plant for our environment or whatever cannabinoids we're looking, or the terpene profile we're looking for. So it's really mixed up, right? Because most of these plants are hybrids. So I would like you to put your hand over your heart. Please do this with me. And I'd like you to take the CCI pledge, which is, I promise to dispel the myth that you can use sativa and indica to predict what effects someone will have after consuming cannabis. Okay, do you promise to do that? I really hope that you do. Let's take a look at another term that might be new for you, and this is called a Landrace strain or a Landrace chemovar. And what are Landraces? So Landraces are strains that they're not wild necessarily, but they've been grown in the same environment for sometimes hundreds of years. So they get extremely well adapted to growing in that particular environment. And that's where, when we were talking about those dozen or so strains that we used to have, they were all, cannabis growing in Thailand and cannabis growing in Mexico and Colombia and all over the place. And they were, again, probably more predictable. That still wasn't, the predictability wasn't because one of them is long and tall and lanky, and one is short and fat and bushy. That's not why. The reason that they have different effects or predictable effects is because of the chemical makeup in the plant. What's the amount of THC or CBD and the terpenes and the other things that are in there, and how is that all interacting with our body? Because of the hybrid situation, it is not impossible, very, very hard to find these original strains, these original types of cannabis that again, have been grown for, centuries and thousands of years. These are like the heirloom tomatoes of the cannabis world. So finding, preserving, reintroducing these landrace strains into our current genetic makeup is really important.
If you are thinking about starting your own cannabis business or getting into the cannabis industry, one of the most important things that you can do for yourself is to get really well educated on this plant. As you've heard there is a lot to dive into. And if you're going to be in this space, it's important that you know as much as possible about this and that you can talk to other people about it so that you can be an ambassador for the plant. At the Cannabis Institute, our certified cannabis educator program gives you all the knowledge and skills that you need to be able to confidently talk about this plant and how beautiful and wonderful and magical it is. And we teach you how to be out there in the world talking about it digitally so that as you grow your business, you're taking advantage of where the people are actually at on podcasts, on videos, checking out social media. If being your own boss in the cannabis industry sounds like a great deal to you, head over to www.cannabiscoachinginstitute.com and check out the Certified Cannabis Educator program. You can be certified in as little as 3 months, and then you can be out there changing the world as well.